My childhood was not easy. My father left the family and my mother was left alone with 3 children. I always knew I wanted to build my own happy family. That was my plan until a series of events happened that forced me to resort to money manipulation and a name change. Life tested me. My wife sought to deprive me of everything. Now I want to share my story. Hello everyone, I consider myself a simple person. Not in the sense of simple, but because I find joy in the little things. I don't need a luxurious house or a new car every couple years. A cozy home, good food, a drink now and then, and a woman to share life with is what makes me content and truly happy. Ideally, I want a quiet life with my other half. My ideal day includes a few hours of fishing, fiddling with an old sports car or pickup truck, and an evening BBQ with a beer. A nice dinner followed by a relaxing evening with a glass of wine that I share with my wife. It's all about simplicity, and that's why I consider myself a simple person. I find happiness in simple things to give you a visual representation. I am a guy of average build, 5 feet 10 inches tall, with brown hair and eyes. Although I'm in my 50s and age has taken its toll, I still don't need pills to feel good about myself. Brenda, my current girlfriend whom I've been dating for 5 years, in her 43 years is single and still quite attractive with typical Hispanic facial features. My day starts early at 5 a.m. First I shower, get dressed, drink coffee, and have breakfast. Then, remembering to kiss Brenda goodbye, I head out to the boat. I spend most of the morning fishing. I sell my catch to local stores or sometimes take tourists on charters to make a little extra money. I don't really need it though. After fishing, I go home to Brenda's house. I cook dinner, clean the fish, and then go to the garage. There I tackle my latest project, a 1967 GMC pickup. In the evening I usually relax with a glass of wine or a bottle of beer. I fire up the barbecue on the porch and cook dinner, steaks, fish, or chicken. Brenda usually joins me with a glass of wine. We discuss our days. After dinner, we clean up and then settle down on the couch. We read books and talk. The evenings usually end with intimacy. Even on nights when we don't make love, we cuddle in our sleep. Sometimes we go to a local bar or invite friends over, so we're not complete hermits. The little coastal town knows me well. I thought I would stay here forever. Until one day at a local bar, I met her. A red-haired beauty, tall, athletic build, with emerald green eyes. She looked like my wife at her age. The problem is, I'm already married. Brenda knows and accepts that. My wife has no idea about Brenda. I try to keep it that way. However, the problems start when my youngest daughter walks into the same bar. We need to leave, and fast, so my daughter doesn't tell my ex everything. I explained to Brenda in a whisper and we left quietly, leaving my friends with a vague excuse, knowing that I would have to tell the real story later. As the door closed behind me, I realized that you were probably wondering what was going on. To tell you the truth, you might have a general idea. Now let me tell you in more detail. At present, I am forced into hiding. My wife, who turned out to be unfaithful and psychopathic, has been cheating on me and planning my destruction. Perhaps things would have been different if I had agreed to a divorce, but I refused. Now I have to use a different name. My real name is Antonio Allen. It is still legally valid, but for obvious reasons I no longer use it. I was born and raised in a small California town. I was the middle child in a family with an older brother and younger sister. After the tragic death of my parents in a car accident during my freshman year of college and the death of my brother from a construction accident a year later, my sister and I became strangers to each other. We even stopped saying hello. After earning a civil engineering degree, I moved across the country in search of a job and took a job with a large engineering firm. There, through a friend, I met Sharon. Despite the red flags associated with her desire to delay adulthood, her beauty, charm, and intelligence won me over. We hit it off immediately, and after a few dates, we became a couple. 3 months later, Sharon spent the night at my place, and after another 3 months, I proposed to her. A year later, we were married. Family life seemed blissful. Sharon became a full-time mom after she found out she was pregnant. We had 3 healthy children, James, Michael, and Kimberly. Kimberly especially wrapped her arms around me and became a daddy's girl. Sharon stayed home and I provided for the family. By the time I was 30, I was promoted to senior engineer. A year later, we bought a house in the suburbs. Life was good. We had great cars, a house, and time to date. Sharon was active in the kids' extracurricular activities, and I'd always supported her by attending every event. However, on April 9, a few months after my 45th birthday, my world was rocked by the events of one lunch hour as I was returning from a construction site not far from home. To my shock, upon noticing a car turning into the driveway, I realized that my best friend Earl had guessed I wasn't home. Seeing him from afar, I realized something was wrong. Parking on the street, I watched as he walked to the door and entered using his key. Alarmed, I called the office and reported the delays on the project. Returning home, I later took a walk around the backyard. There I noticed a small gap in the bedroom blinds. The blinds on the patio door were usually left open. Sneaking around the edge of the yard, I hid behind some bushes, watching through the French doors. There stood my wife in a very short robe, passionately kissing my former best friend. I quickly pulled out my cell phone and recorded their actions. As soon as they moved into the hallway, I walked over to the bedroom window, continuing to film everything that was happening. When she came in, she took off her robe and I had to stop recording when his pants came down. Shortly after I could stand the sight no longer, I left furtively. As I walked away from the window, I thought about how lucky I was that they hadn't noticed me. I realized that many might write that in that case you could have kicked both of their asses, but at that moment it hurt me to see it. So what would you do if you were in my shoes? But what action I took, I'll tell you now. Back at the office, I was stunned. I never expected her to betray our marriage. Wanting more information, my engineering mind went to work. After a couple hours, engineers solve problems. It's in our nature. I convinced Sharon that I would be home a little later. It was a plausible excuse, as it was not uncommon for me to work late on the internet. I purchased some discreet Wi-Fi video cameras despite their high cost. I financed the purchase so that it would not be noticed until it was too late. The cameras were delivered to my office to avoid suspicion at home. At the same time, I subtly manipulated our savings and retirement accounts by making small changes there. My final task was to research divorce laws. The task was unpleasant, but necessary. For the next week, I needed to be on my usual behavior, hiding my new knowledge from her. I announced a possible goal to avoid close contact and intimacy. We slept separately, signaling a growing rift between us. On Friday, the cameras arrived and I hid them in strategic places in the house while Sharon was out shopping. I discreetly installed cameras in the bedroom, living room, and kitchen while the kids were out. I hid the recording device in the attic, where Sharon never went. Despite everything, we had intimacy that night. She remained an attractive woman and our physical connection was always satisfying. On Sunday, I spent time with the kids doing fatherly duties. I cooked steak for dinner and we watched a movie, after which I went to bed. Monday at work was tough. My thoughts were completely consumed with what was waiting for me on camera. When I got home, Sharon sensed my anxiety, but I attributed it to staffing issues at work. After dinner, I apologized and retired to my home office. Secretly, I loaded the video onto a flash drive and reviewed the footage. I fast-forwarded to the moment Earl walked in. The footage showed them kissing in the living room, engaging in intimate acts on our bed, and sharing warm moments. In the bathroom, they got dressed, exchanged another passionate kiss, and he left. This revelation shocked me and made me think about investigating more thoroughly the next day. That night, Sharon noticed my moodiness. I reiterated the personnel problem, hinting at a potential layoff. She didn't like the answer. The next morning brought an even bigger shock. When I listened to the audio portion of the recording, I learned more. Earl asked, "When are you going to leave Antonio's sorry ass and run away with me?" She replied, "I can't yet. I want to wait until the kids are out of school. Until then, he'll be too much of a distraction for them. Besides, he makes really good money, and I want to save up some capital." Earl quizzed, "Do you hate him that much?" She replied, "No, I like him and he provides for me well, but I've never really loved him. I've always seen it only as a good meal ticket. He's decent in bed, but I always thought of him more as a friend with benefits." She continued, "When I eventually divorce him, I will need to secure as much of his property as I can to maintain the lifestyle I desire. It's not about wanting to cheat him. I just want to make sure I can live comfortably without having to work for the rest of my life. Why not find another husband who is more compatible?" Earl asked. She replied, "What if he finds out about it? We'll both end up on the street." She added confidently, "He won't find out, and even if he does, I'll present irrefutable facts during the divorce." I was out of work about 6 months into our marriage, ensuring that I would receive substantial alimony, child support, and health care for the children, as well as a significant portion of our savings in retirement. I will also seek full custody of the children and get the house after the divorce. After hearing that, I had no choice but to accept it. If she tries to start a war, I will destroy her. It was at that moment that my world finally turned upside down and I started thinking about how to protect myself first. At that moment, I probably didn't really realize the gravity of the situation, but the only thing I knew was that I needed to act immediately. I spent a day researching the divorce laws in our state. The situation turned out to be pretty grim. After consulting with a friend who is an attorney, we discussed my options. It turned out that I would have to pay a significant amount of alimony, give her the house, split my retirement savings, and pay monthly alimony due to her not working during our marriage. The state did not consider her betrayal. Feeling completely destitute, I realized there was only one way out. Over the next 2 months, I put together false documents, quit my job, cashed in my pension, and refinanced the house. I placed the money in offshore accounts. I created several offshore bank accounts online, transferring money in random amounts to avoid detection. I withdrew cash from ATMs, deposited it into new accounts in my name, and electronically transferred it offshore. I made sure all of our accounts were empty to a couple thousand. My car I sold for cash and put the money in the offshore accounts. Claiming it was my day off, I went to the office. While she was at the gym working out, I stored the collected video and information on flash drives and in the cloud. Before sending out mass emails to friends and her family, I completed the final transfer of funds to offshore accounts. I closed all internal accounts and burned all reports and documents in the grid to leave no paper trail. The computer was reformatted and a flash drive with a destructive virus was inserted. Accounts were secured and paper trails were erased, making it difficult to find an account that wasn't even known if someone could piece together the events. I transferred the money several times, eliminating all traces. I headed to the airport, making 3 stops along the way. At each of my children's schools, I left a flash drive for them. Another one I delivered home. Over the course of a week, I took 6 flights, used 3 rental cars, visited different airports and 4 countries before landing in Costa Rica, where I was ready to start a new life under a new identity. Before you think I'm irresponsible, let me be clear. I have set up a trust fund for my children. This fund will cover their educational expenses and ensure that they each have enough money for their needs. A trusted friend from work became the trustee of the fund, ensuring that the kids would get everything they needed. My wife could not access a single penny. The children's basic needs such as food and rent were covered, giving them decent accommodation and food, although without luxury. Eventually, the house went into foreclosure, forcing her to find alternative accommodation thanks to my strategic actions and investments over 6 years. I had accumulated over $5 million in the bank and Sharon had nothing to do with it. Now let me tell you why I chose this path and where I got my $5 million from. During spring break my freshman year of college, I studied engineering, following in my father's footsteps. Although I hadn't seen him in the 6 years since he left home, leaving chaos behind, my dad left a flash drive for each of us, revealing the disturbing truth that my mom had a difficult time. A while back, my mom lost her home, and we had to make do with a much smaller rented house. She even had to find a job, a task she despised. Thankfully, my father took care of us, ensuring that we were never short of necessities. The trust was limited, however, and nothing was provided for my mom. She had to find money for clothes and extras on her own. In this way, I had all my basic needs covered and never needed anything. If you draw parallels, you will realize that I did the same thing as my father did many years ago. Unfortunately, he too faced betrayal from a woman he loved very much. Even though he did what he thought was in his best interest, not only for himself, but also for his children, I don't judge him. Because of him, I was able to lay the foundation for my future life. Back to the present. I left my wife before she had a chance to realize her plan with her best friend. I lived happily for 5 years even though I was married. This did not embarrass my current girlfriend, although she sometimes said that sooner or later I would have to meet my wife to discuss things. That thought horrified me. I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to see her face. The thought of meeting my wife repulsed me. You could call me a coward because I just disappeared and didn't get in touch for 5 years. Frankly, I'm afraid to get in touch. In 5 years, I was able to build a new life for myself and be happy. But I also realized that it's impossible to hide anymore. Sooner or later, I will be noticed, and then it will be completely bad because my children and sister are looking for me in different states and can find me at any moment. I learned about the life of Sharon and her lover thanks to my lawyer friend who called me every week and gave me the latest news. After I realized my revenge plan and left, it took Sharon a long time to realize what had happened. She just couldn't believe that her husband, who was always faithful and gave her a lot of pocket money, had suddenly disappeared, leaving her penniless. She came out to her parents and relatives to whom I had anonymously sent pictures. In those pictures, she was cheating on me with my best friend. The reaction was beyond my expectations. Her parents are religious people and Sharon was raised in a strict family atmosphere. She was a smart girl, an excellent student, and always served as an example for other children. Her parents were very proud of her. Now imagine them finding out that their daughter, who married a decent man and has 3 children, a house and a car, had all illusions shattered when they received an anonymous letter. Her parents and everyone close to her turned away from her. They began to despise her. It's unpleasant, of course, but she deserves it, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. Surprisingly, my fake friend Earl, who visited her often, also turned his back on her. I think it had to do with the fact that she had become the laughingstock of society, and he didn't want to be around someone like that. Earl tried to contact me and threatened me, demanding moral compensation for the damage he had done. This made me laugh because I had changed all my information and I was now a different person. Back to the ex-wife. I've seen her pictures and she's clearly neglected herself, stopped looking after herself, and, as far as I could tell, hasn't been in a new relationship for a long time. I can't say I'm gloating. I don't care what she's got going on. The most important thing to me is my kids. I feel good about myself and they don't need anything now. Let's go back to that moment at the bar. My ex-wife has been trying to find me for the last 5 years, and my sister has been helping her with that. I was hoping I could hide forever because I left no trace. But unfortunately, you can't be 100% sure of anything. Something can always go wrong. At the beginning of my story, I mentioned a bar where we often vacationed with friends. One day a girl walked into this bar that reminded me of my unfaithful wife. It turned out that it was our daughter who had somehow found out what state I lived in. I got really paranoid that day. I didn't know what to do. Brenda tried to calm me down, but to no avail. The next day, I called a friend from that bar, and he told me that a girl came in yesterday and wanted to get her mom a job as a waitress named Sharon, but she was turned down. This news stunned me. I had forgotten that my ex and I were together at this place, but then I remembered that when we were still together, we used to come here a lot. We enjoyed our time here and discussed how in our old age we would buy a lake house here and enjoy life. I assumed she had just moved here with my daughter to save money and reminisce about her youth. I didn't know what to do. Brenda told me I needed to talk to her, explaining that she probably didn't mean to hurt me and had realized her mistake long ago. I reluctantly accepted her decision. Brenda is a wise woman, and that is why I love her. I listened to her and decided to meet with Sharon. I got her phone number through a friend of mine at the bar. I called her the next day and arranged to meet her at the same bar for 11 o'clock. The next day we met up. I came with Brenda and we sat down at a table. Sharon looked much better compared to previous years. As we talked, it became clear that Sharon had been mad at me for a long time and had wanted to find me, even hired assassins, but to no avail. She eventually started going to church and atoning for her sins. At some point, she had an epiphany. She realized where she could feel happy and start her life from scratch. Costa Rica is where I went too. Brenda and I stayed in Costa Rica where we enjoy a quiet life. Sharon moved here, renting my old house, and I helped her get a job. My resentment toward Sharon has faded, and although I have no love for her, I feel she has been punished enough. We bought a bigger house so we could see Sharon's family more often. Working as a waitress, she often serves us at a local bar, expressing regret for the past. I made it clear that she would be homeless if she jeopardized our well-being. Life goes on and we continue to enjoy our time together. That's the end of the story. Did the main character do the right thing in deciding to leave his wife and children, or could he have approached the situation more calmly? We believe the main character made the right choice. He chose to be happy. Yes, the situation he faced was terrible, but the most important thing is that he coped and found the strength to move on. It doesn't matter anymore what he went through because it wasn't all for nothing. If you like this story and would like to see more like it, then give it a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, we will realize that it is important for you, and we will pick up more interesting and instructive stories. This is goodbye. Thank you for watching and good luck.